Oh.
Hello everybody, I'm Ricky.
And hello everybody, I'm Sydney.
Today we're going to review the scripture that the world knows as the Song of Solomon.
Yeah.
It is found in your Bible between Ecclesiastes and Isaiah.
Throughout the last decade, many pastors, theologians, scholars, and multiple Christian groups have viewed this book as containing a great deal of sexual innuendo, and it's not very often addressed in fellowship meetings or in mixed congregations. The common approach is that this book should only be read by husbands and wives behind closed doors.
The doors are closed.
But is that so? Let's dig into this thing for a minute and try to uncover the truth.
Now, before we get started, I want to say that there are going to be some sensitive discussion in this video. So, parental discretion is advised. We're going to keep it as tactful as possible. We're not going to go off the deep end and really talk about some really, illicit things. But I do want you to know in advance that this is going to be a little bit of a sensitive topic.
Nah.
Now, as we look further into this book in the scripture, I want to refer to my personal Bible, one I use quite often. It's the Life Application Study Bible. It's a Tyndale, put out by the Tyndale Society.
That's a King James Version Bible, folks, for those of you that don't know.
It is a study Bible, and this is a very classic example of why that one should really understand that in a study Bible, the scripture is absolutely right. It's completely accurate. But the side notes and the study keys are their man-made and their idea. The people who put this Bible out, it's their understanding of what these certain scriptures or passages and things says within this Bible. But I want to read what is said in this Life Application Study Bible about the Song of Solomon. This is the intro that they placed inside this. Now, before anyone takes what I have said out of context, I want to be clear. The King James Version Bible is the inspired, inerrant word of the living God. The scripture is 100% accurate. But the man-made notes inside these study Bibles are exactly that. You cannot place your salvation, your faith, and your understanding of the scripture in somebody else's hands. You need to study to show yourself approved. Okay? This Bible, before the Song of Solomon, they have inserted here, saturated with stories of sexual escapades, secret rendezvous, and extramarital affairs, today's media teach that immorality means freedom, perversion is natural, and commitment is old-fashioned. Sex created by God and pronounced good in Eden has been twisted and exploited and turned into an urgent, illicit, casual, and self-gratifying activity. Love has turned into lust, giving into getting, and lasting commitment into no strings attached. In reality, sexual intercourse, the physical and emotional union of male and female, should be a holy means of celebrating love, producing children, and experiencing pleasure, protected by the commitment of marriage. God thinks sex is important, and Scripture contains numerous guidelines for its use and warnings about its misuse. And sex is always mentioned in the context of a loving relationship between a husband and wife. Perhaps the highlight of this is the Song of Solomon. Now there's where we're going to have to disagree. I'm fixing to show you why here in a little bit. But this is what it says about the Song of Solomon, okay? Perhaps the highlight of this is the Song of Solomon, the intimate story of a man and woman, their love, courtship, and marriage. Solomon probably wrote this song in his youth before being overtaken by his own obsession with women, sex, and pleasure. That is not an accurate depiction of this book. Now, what they said in the beginning of this about what the world has turned sex into and the relationships they're in is accurate. But this is not an accurate representation of the book of the Song of Solomon. And like I said, we're fixing to go into that more here in a minute. I'm fixing to continue reading this intro. A moving story, drama, and poem, the Song of Solomon features the love dialogue between a simple Jewish maiden, the Shulamite woman, and her lover, Solomon the king. They describe in intimate detail their feelings for each other and their longings to be together. Throughout the dialogue, sex and marriage are put in their proper, God-given perspective. Much debate is raged over the meaning of this song. Some say it is an allegory of God's love for Israel or for the church. Others say it is a literal story about married love. In reality, it is both a historical story with two layers of meaning. On one level, we learn about love, marriage, and sex, and on the other level, we see God's overwhelming love for his people. As you read the Song of Solomon, remember that you are loved by God and commit yourself to seeing life, sex, and marriage from his point of view. Now, as we go through the book, it's only 8 chapters, so it ain't going to take us forever to get through the Song of Solomon, but we are going to pause and discuss a few things as we go through this book. And when we get through this book together, I want you to consider, we will read this insert one more time at the end of this video. I want to point out that this intro is well written. It flows good. It in itself has a poetic feel to it. But this is not scripture. This is what somebody else has written based on their understanding of this book. Now, the reason I say that is we have to be careful and watch out for those well-written things that sound beautiful, that sound wonderful, that sound heavenly. If it's not backed up by scripture, it's straight out of the gates of hell. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just making a point that Satan can make anything sound good. That's why he's good at what he does. Now, the position that I want to take is that this is a song. Okay? So we need to remember that this is poetry. It is not written in the fashion that you would normally speak to someone if you were just talking to them outright. This is written as a poetic form of recording these events.
You know, I honestly think that the Song of Solomon is probably the most beautiful love story that Solomon ever saw in his life. And we have to remember that Solomon was the wisest man that ever lived.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about a man who literally had 1,000 women in his life, and this was a beautiful enough love story that he recorded it. I mean, this is scripture. There is nothing in God's word that we should ever be ashamed to read. And this is something that should be shared more often. Young women are not brought up with real love stories. We're brought up with fairy tales and princesses, and that's not a true love story. That's not how love really works. This book is an excellent example of a good example for your daughters.
Very good point. We also need to remember and consider that in King Solomon's day, they had not been subjected to the sexual revolution that we in the United States have been subjected to since the 1920s or 30s till the current date. So I believe that in itself is one of the main reasons of the misunderstanding of this book. Is because of the sexual revolution and the country we live in has conditioned our minds to think in the gutter, so to speak, when this is not written in such a fashion, and these writings were not taboo at the time. And this was poetry that was designed to record the storyline of the Song of Solomon. Many people in today's society has not recognized that this book, this song, has a storyline. It absolutely tells a tale. And one of the main characters have been left out of everybody's understanding here. We need to open our minds up a little bit, consider whether or not this actually has a story, because it's not just a dialogue. It is a record. I believe that it was a very important event that happened to King Solomon, and it had a profound effect on him and the rest of his life. So this is a beautiful book, and it is not at all the Christian form of the Kama Sutra. This is actually, matter of fact, I contend, in my position, as you're going to have a hard time finding any sexual innuendo in this book whatsoever. I contend that there isn't any sexual innuendo in this book.
In today's reading of the Song of Solomon, Ricky and I are going to kind of bounce off each other a little bit. Now, one of the things I want you to notice is that there's not 2 main characters in this book, but 3. And that's a very important point to make because it changes the entire perception of the book. Most people are told that it's only 2 characters in the book with a few little minor supports, but there are actually 3 main characters. So pay very close attention. In the Song of Solomon, the 3 characters that are at the forefront are the Shulamite woman, obviously, who in our preface is listed as what, a common woman?
She is said to be, according to this thing, is a simple Jewish maiden.
A simple Jewish maiden.
The Shulamite woman.
The Shulamite woman. We have the Shulamite woman. We have, of course, King Solomon, who is the wisest man that ever lived, one of the most important men that's ever lived. He was unbelievably wealthy. He had, a whole household full of women that he took care of. And then we have this other character. We know him simply as the shepherd.
Seems fitting, don't it?
Yeah, that seems fitting, doesn't it? One more thing I want you to pay attention to is the fact that in our preface, it mentions Solomon being a young man, or at least that's their assumption. I would like to posit the theory that he was not as young as they seem to think. We'll get into that more later, though. All right, Ricky, are you ready to start reading?
Let's do this.
All right.
The Song of Songs, which is Solomon's.
Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for thy love is better than wine.
I would like to point out here one point. Just because they're kissing by mouth does not make this a sexual action. It's intimate, yes, but it's not sex. So we're going to move on.
I mean, have you ever been to a wedding?
Yeah. And they kiss the bride?
They kiss the bride?
Yeah, right in front of everybody?
Right in front of everybody.
The nerve of those people, you know?
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah. Verse 3.
Let's see, verse 3. Because of the savor of thy good ointments, thy name is as ointment poured forth. Therefore do the virgins love thee.
Now we need to remember that this is a poem. It's written poetically. And she's just saying that the women flock over this guy.
Yeah, and that he is something special.
Right. Verse 4.
Draw me. We will run after thee. The king hath brought me into his chambers. We will be glad and rejoice in thee. We will remember thy love more than wine. The upright love thee.
All right. Now, I want to make the point right here. It says, the king hath brought me into his chambers. That does not mean that the king has done anything appropriate to her.
No.
And it does not mean that they were married at this time. This is the verse that they use to say,
Right.
This is when the marriage commenced. The king brings a lot of people into his chambers.
Well, you got to remember who all's in the king's chambers. You've got his knights, his personal guard. You've got the people that help him get dressed in the morning. You've got his chambermaid that takes out the chamber pots. I mean, you have a lot of people in there.
Yeah.
And
so,
his personal chambers were more like his office. It was kind of like it's like inviting someone into your home. There were his chambers, and then there was the rest of the palace. His chambers just indicates that they were in his domain. It wasn't a public space.
Okay, verse 5.
Verse 5. I am black but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. Now make a note right there. She mentions the curtains of Solomon. If something was Ricky's, okay, we're married. If something was Ricky's, I would not mention it as Ricky's something necessarily. So like Ricky's car. I would say my husband's car or his car if I was like talking about him in a conversation.
I think it's obvious here that whoever she's talking to is not Solomon.
Right, either talking to or talking about.
Yeah, correct. And make a note here that she says that she is black.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
That's really interesting.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Verse 6 starts up with, Look not upon me, because I am black. So she says it again right there. Look not upon me, because I am black, because the sun hath looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but mine own vineyard have I not kept. Now, something to note here is that in the Song of Solomon, vineyards and grapes come up a lot.
Right.
And I think it's an allegory for love and a loving relationship.
Right. I agree.
I think that point needs to be made now before we get too many grapes going on.
Yeah. The grapes of wrath or something.
The grapes of wrath, yeah.
Okay.
Verse 7 says, Tell me, O thou whom my soul loveth.
Now, she refers to the man she loves as that a lot.
Yeah, the man whom her soul
Thou
loveth.
whom my soul loveth.
Yeah.
She refers to him a lot like that.
Tell me, O thou whom my soul loveth, where thou feedest, where thou makest thy flock to rest at noon. For why should I be as one that turneth aside by the flocks of thy companions? So that's a question. She says, why should I follow you? Why should I turn aside? That's kind of an interesting sentiment there. She's trying to figure herself out.
Right. Now it starts with him in verse 8. He says, now this is the guy, right? Thou who her soul loveth. You know, this is the man she's talking to. He says, if thou know not, O thou fairest among women. Because now, she doesn't talk about herself as being fair and beautiful.
Right, as the fairest among women. That's a man's description.
She does not consider herself that, if you listen to what she said before this.
Right.
But in this, he's telling her she is.
Right.
He said, if thou not, O thou fairest among women, go thy way forth by the footsteps of the flock, and feed thy kids beside the shepherds' tents. The shepherds' tents. Now, not shepherds plural, shepherds singular,
like shepherds,
possessive.
Singular possessive, yeah.
Yes.
And another thing there is a king that has absolutely everything that anyone could ever ask for or want or anything. I mean, you got to remember how wealthy Solomon was. He's not going to advise the woman that he's in love with to go out and sit in the pasture and feed the baby sheep. He's just not. That is someone else addressing her.
Right. This is somebody who is a shepherd.
Yeah.
Addressing her. So in this first chapter already we've established the three main characters. We have established King Solomon, the shepherd, and the Shulamite woman.
Right.
Verse 9 says, I have compared thee, O my love, to a company of horses in the Pharaoh's chariots. Thy cheeks are comely with rows of jewels, thy neck with chains of gold. We will make thee borders of gold with studs of silver, while the king sitteth at his table. So he's talking about the king in another person's sense. My spikenard sendeth forth the smell thereof.
That's the end of his, right?
Oh,
there.
yeah, that is the end of his.
That's the end of his. But spikenard is a very, it wasn't a super expensive spice, but it was a very rich smelling spice.
Yes.
And it's something that was highly prized in the region specifically, but it was something that grew wild in the fields. So it was accessible to anyone who wanted it, but it was still something that was prized even in the highest palaces. So you'll see the word spikenard come up quite a bit.
Okay, and that starts in verse 12. This is actually her talking, correct?
Yeah, in verse 13.
In verse 13, she picks up.
In verse 13, she picks up. So this is our maiden again. A bundle of myrrh is my well-beloved unto me. So he's valuable. He shall lie all night betwixt my breasts. Now that's not necessarily a sexual thing. That's a thing of comfort.
That's protection. That a boy, will lay between his mother's breast and sleep. That does not even mean she had her shirt off at the time.
Right. That's
a place of rest, and poetically, I mean that's not a sexual act.
Well, and you could even read into that he's in her heart. That could be also poetically seen that way. It goes on, my beloved is unto me as a cluster of camphor in the vineyards of En-gedi. So...
Is that En-gedi or En-gedi?
I think it's En-gedi.
Okay.
Think of like Serengeti. It may not be logical at all, but that's how I've always pronounced it.
It's a name.
It's a name. It's a name of a place.
Call it something and go on. Don't get stuck on the name.
That's right. And he comes right back to us for a verse right here in 15.
Yeah, he says, behold, thou art fire, my love. Behold, thou art fire. Thou hast dove's eyes. He's telling her how pretty she is.
Oh. And she comes back and she says, behold, thou art fair, my beloved. Yea, pleasant. Also our bed is green. The beams of our house are cedar, and our rafters of fir. So you got to remember, they're from Lebanon. You remember the cedars of Lebanon?
Yeah, this is most expensive wood they had at the time. Most expensive wood
they had at the time. And she's saying, you're going to build me a beautiful house out of this wonderful wood that we have laying around all over the place. Yeah. Chapter 2 starts up with her also. And she says, I am the rose of Sharon, and the lily of the valleys. As the lily among thorns, so is my love among the daughters. So she's saying that her love is superior to any other woman that he could possibly find among those that he has choice of.
Her love is pure love.
Her love is pure love. Mm-hmm. She says, as the apple tree among the trees of the wood, so is my beloved among the sons. I sat down under his shadow with great delight, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. So she's saying the same of him. She's saying, I'm the best and you're the best, so why don't we just,
Yeah, it's kind of like Johnny Bravo.
Oh, no.
He goes, I'm pretty, you're pretty, let's just go back to my place and let's stare at each other.
Oh, Lord.
No, they have a mutual admiration society going on here right now.
Sort of, yeah, but...
And it's beautiful.
Doesn't everyone awesome. When they first fall in love.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's amazing.
And even sometimes when they've been in love for many years. Huh?
Okay.
Verse 4 starts back up. He brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was love. Stay me with flagons, comfort me with apples, for I am sick of love.
She's lovesick.
Yeah. People a lot of times will read that and go, oh, she didn't want to be in love anymore because she was sick of love. No, there's a difference between sick of love and I'm sick because I'm in love.
Oh, yeah, she wants to be with him all the time.
She wants to be with him all the time, and it makes her ill to think about being apart.
Well, and it is important to recognize right here that seems to be something going on that's keeping them apart.
Oh, yeah, there's something between them.
So,
and if you go back to the beginning of this chapter, you see why, and we'll go over that in a minute.
Well, we'll see why here later on, too.
And yeah, it brings it right back up.
So,
His left hand is under my head, and his right hand doth embrace me. I charge you, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, by the roes and by the hinds of the field, that ye stir not up, nor awake my love, till he please. So she's trying to make sure that no one comes between them.
yeah. Well, she's charging the daughters of Jerusalem, say, don't mess with my man.
Yeah, that's exactly what that is.
Don't stir him up.
That's exactly what that is.
This guy's mine.
Right, right. 8 picks up, the voice of my beloved. Behold, he cometh, leaping upon the mountains, skipping upon the hills. My beloved is like a roe or a young hart. Behold, he standeth behind our wall. He looketh forth at the windows, showing himself through the lattice. My beloved spake and said unto me, Rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. And from this point, the voice of the shepherd actually picks up, because these are the things that he said to her at this point in time.
Well, okay, I'll pick up at verse 11. For lo, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth, the time of the singing birds is come, and the voice of the turtle is heard in our land. So it's springtime.
Yeah.
Everything's coming out in the spring.
And for those of you who don't think that turtles make noise, just do a little bit of research. Turtles do, in fact, make noises.
Yeah, so verse 13, he says, The fig tree putteth forth her green figs, and the vines with the tender grapes give a good smell. Arise, my love, my fair one, and come away. O my dove, that art in the clefts of the rock, and the secret places of the stars, let me see thy countenance, let me hear thy voice, for sweet is thy voice, and thy countenance is comely. Notice that she is in the clefts of rocks, in secret places here.
Yeah, she's being hidden away for some reason.
She's kept away from him, okay? And then he says in verse 15, Take us the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vines, for our vines have tender grapes.
Right there. Right there. Our vines have tender grapes. So this is that grape metaphor coming back around.
Right.
And this is, a young love, and they're trying not to have it broken up.
Right. Well, they are going through some turmoil here for some reason. But in verse 16, she picks
back up, and she says, My beloved is mine, and I am his. He feedeth among the lilies. Until the day break and the shadows flee away, turn, my beloved, and be thou like a roe or a young hart upon the mountains of Bether.
So she's saying turn and flee.
Yeah, she's telling him
she's
to run away.
telling him to run away.
So if you run back a little bit, she was talking about him alighting on the windowsill, basically, coming up and showing himself through the lattice. And he spoke to her, and now she's telling him to run away.
Yeah.
So she's in this place where she can't see him, and she's pining for him. And then he comes to see her, but she's afraid that something's going to happen to him, and she sends him away again. She's
possibly still in the king's chambers.
I do believe so.
I
do believe so.
She's hidden away from him.
And chapter 3 continues with her story. She picks up and says, By night on my bed I sought him, whom my soul loveth. So this is the same man.
So she sought the same guy here, the shepherd.
Right. She says, By night on my bed I sought him, whom my soul loveth. I sought him, but I found him not. So he wasn't there anymore.
He ran away.
I will rise now, and go about the city in the streets, and in the broad ways I will seek him, whom my soul loveth. I sought him, but I found him not. So again, she searched all over the city for this man, and still hasn't found him. The watchmen that go about the city found me, to whom I said, Saw ye him whom my soul loveth? So she inquired of them, Have they seen him?
Mm-hmm.
It was but a little that I passed from them, but I found him whom my soul loveth. So she found him.
She did find him.
I held him, and would not let him go until I had brought him unto my mother into my mother's house, and into the chamber of her that conceived me.
So she took him to her mother's house.
To her mother's house. I charge you, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, by the roes and by the hinds of the field, that ye stir not up, nor awake my love till he please.
Again, she's telling them to leave him alone.
Right. Who is this that cometh out of the wilderness, like pillars of smoke perfumed with myrrh and frankincense, with all powders of the merchant? Behold his bed, which is Solomon's. 80 valiant men are about it, of the valiant of Israel.
So now she's addressing Solomon here.
Now she's addressing Solomon. They all hold swords, being expert in war. Every man hath his sword upon his thigh because of fear in the night. King Solomon made himself a chariot of the wood of Lebanon, which Lebanon is their home. You know, that's kind of an interesting point there, that
right.
that was, really valuable, but it was also something that was dear to her personally. He made the pillars thereof of silver, the bottom thereof of gold, the covering of it of purple, in the midst thereof being paved with love for the daughters of Jerusalem.
It seems to me right here she is actually acknowledging all the stuff that Solomon has to offer her.
Yeah, she's acknowledging that he has what would protect her, what would make sure she was always clothed and fed and taken well care of.
Yeah.
She could have the riches that he offers, because, all of these things are signs of wealth, including the purple fabric, including the gold and the silver, the cedars of Lebanon. These are very expensive things.
So verse 11, she has more to say here.
She says, Go forth, O ye daughters of Zion, and behold, King Solomon, with the crown wherewith his mother crowned him in the day of his espousals, and in the day of the gladness of his heart.
So she's telling the daughters of Jerusalem that she keeps telling to stay away from her man to go to Solomon.
Right.
Okay.
But at this point, Solomon has something to say, and we're actually leaving the voice of the shepherd behind. As a matter of fact, the shepherd never speaks again in the rest of the book. So
maybe not. We'll see.
Maybe not. But best I know of, he never says anything else.
But they have much to say about the shepherd Solomon and this woman. So
yes.
Solomon starts in chapter 4 here. He's got something to tell her as well. He says, Behold, thou art fire, my love. Behold, thou art fire. Thou hast dove's eyes within thy locks. Thy hair is as a flock of goats that appear from Mount Gilead.
And she said, What? Why are you messing about my hair?
No, she don't.
In all seriousness, though, goats were a
very
prized commodity.
So when in those days, if you said something like that, you are actually comparing this person with the most valuable things you could think of at the time.
Right.
He said, Thy teeth are like a flock of sheep that are even shorn, which came up from the washing, wherefore everyone bare twins, and none is barren among them. Thy lips are like a thread of scarlet, and thy speech is comely. Thy temples are like a piece of pomegranate within thy locks. Thy neck is like a tower of David builded for an armory, whereon there hang 1,000 bucklers, all shields of mighty men. Notice that when Solomon's talking, he's comparing her to a lot different stuff.
Oh, yeah.
About the only parallel to his comparisons to her beauty as the shepherds is the eyes of doves. So evidently, this woman has some really beautiful eyes.
Right.
And they both noticed she had eyes of doves, but everything else they say is not very parallel, because the king is surrounded by all of these armies and money and wealth and things. So he compares her to those things. The shepherd only compares her to the things that he sees that's the most beautiful thing in the world, because he don't have all of the stuff
Right.
that the king is.
Solomon's comparing her to the might and wealth of the kingdom. This shepherd has been comparing her to the beauty of God's creation.
And this, in verse 5 here in chapter 4, is one that people consider to be a sexual a comment, but it's really not. It says, thy two breasts are like two young roes that are twins, which feed among the lilies. He is still complimenting her looks.
Yeah.
He's making the point that she's a young woman. She's still well formed. She hasn't aged and started drooping in things. And back then, that was not an inappropriate thing to say.
Right.
And it was not a shocker. And it doesn't even mean that he's seen her bare chested.
Right.
He's just
telling
telling her.
As a matter of fact, later on in the book, he talks about the beauty of her feet in shoes.
Yeah, right. So she might have had high heels on or something.
She might have had. But my point therein is that just because he complimented her body doesn't mean that she was naked.
Right. And it does not mean there's anything sexual going on here.
Right.
And then he says in verse 6, until the day break and the shadows flee away, I will get me to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of frankincense. Thou art all fire, my love. There is not a spot in thee. So, when he's talking about her breast, he is acknowledging that there's absolutely nothing about the woman that's imperfect.
Yeah, she's unflawed.
Every part of her is, in his eyes, exactly what an ideal woman should be. He's saying there is no spot in thee, right here in verse 7. And then he says, come with me from Lebanon, my spouse.
Ooh, that's a controversial word.
That's a controversial word, very controversial word, because I first read this and I said, holy smoke, are they actually married? But one thing we need to always consider and understand, that the King James Version Bible was translated in 1611.
Yeah, there's a lot of definitions that have changed since then, especially things like love and spouse.
So I did some research, and it didn't take long before I found this, the origins of the word spouse. And it says it comes from the Latin term sponsus or sponsa, meaning betrothed man or betrothed woman. The terms derive from the Latin verb spondere, to pledge. A spouse is the person who has pledged to wed another person and be united in marriage with that person, usually in some official way. So in 1611, the word spouse did not mean they were married. It means that they were betrothed, which now we understand the plot that's going on here. The Shulamite woman has been betrothed and promised to King Solomon, but she is in fact in love with this shepherd. And they love each other dearly. So now she is in the chambers of King Solomon, being held there because she is espoused to wed him. The wedding has not happened. This is one proof. I've got another thing coming up a little bit later that proves that she had not yet married King Solomon. So in our preface, we hear that she was, when she wasn't, she was espoused to King Solomon, but they were not married at the time. So when he says in verse 8 of chapter 4, come with me from Lebanon, my spouse, with me from Lebanon, look from the top of the Amana, from the top of Shinar and Hermon, from the lion's dens, from the mountains of the leopards. Thou hast ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse. Now, this is where a lot of people and scoffers say that this book is encouraging incest, because King Solomon addresses her as his sister, his spouse. This is not a sense of sister as in his daddy or mama's daughter. He is confirming here, my sister, as we are of the same faith.
Well, that's no different than when we're at church, I call you Brother Ricky sometimes.
Or sister.
But we're married.
Anybody. Yeah. I mean, he is acknowledging here that this Shulamite woman is of the same faith as he is. They both worship the same God. Now, we do know that in King Solomon's day, he had many wives of other faiths that God had warned him not to do, and they turned his heart from God. So, I don't know for sure which faith they're talking about here, but he was acknowledging in this passage, my sister and my spouse, we are of the same faith, or he was willing to claim the same faith to be with this woman. You know, he was willing to turn his whole back toward God if that was the case, or he may have been saying, you know, we both worship the same God and he's the God of Israel. So anyhow, either way, he is acknowledging my sister and my spouse, which is we worship the same God and you are to be my wife. But he says, thou hast ravished my heart, my sister and my spouse. Thou hast ravished my heart with one of thine eyes, with one chain of thy neck.
Does that mean he only saw her in the profile?
That would be like a profile view.
Like
he only seen her once,
saw her
and
across
fell in
the
love
room
with
or
her,
something,
yeah.
and fell in love with
you
her.
know, he seen the side of her face and the necklace down one side of her neck, and that was enough for him to just fall in love. Evidently, she was a very beautiful woman. And he says, how fair is thy love, my sister, my spouse? How much better is thy love than wine, and the smell of thine ointments than all spices? Thy lips, O my spouse, drop as a honeycomb. In other words, he likes the way she talks.
Right.
Honey and milk are under thy tongue, and the smell of thy garments. He's really pouring it on here. He's trying to really gain
He's
charm
saying,
this
you're
girl.
pretty and you smell nice and you talk
And the
good.
smell of thy garments is like the smell of Lebanon. A garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse. A spring shut up and a fountain sealed. Now that's...
He's acknowledging that she is like locking herself away, that she is not acknowledging his favor.
He's acknowledging she's undefiled.
Well, she's undefiled, but she's
still...
he's also seeing that she's built a wall between them.
Yeah, and that he has not been able to come unto her.
Right.
And so, I mean, the extramarital stuff is just nonsense here. He has not been able to.
Right.
And she's not let him. Like you say, she's built that wall. And verse 13 said, thy plants are an orchard of pomegranates, with pleasant fruits, camphor, with spikenard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with all trees of frankincense, myrrh, and aloes, with all the chief spices. This is the most expensive things he can think of to compare her to and tell her that she's like it, you know. A fountain of gardens and a well of living waters and the streams from Lebanon.
You know, she's sitting here hearing all of this, and this is akin to the woman today being presented with diamonds and gold and sapphires and going, money isn't everything.
Right. He's really trying to impress her, and seems like he's getting plumb confused because she don't seem to be impressible.
Yeah.
But now she says this in verse 16.
In verse 16 she says, awake, O north wind, and come thou south. Blow upon my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out. Let my beloved come into his garden, and eat his pleasant fruits.
Again,
so
she's talking about her beloved.
You know,
here,
the king acknowledges that she's built this wall up, that she's closed off her garden to him, that he can't get in. But she's saying that the door is going to open for the right person. It's just not him.
Well, she's basically saying you can look but don't touch.
Yeah, basically.
You know, she's saying, you know, come, north wind blow upon my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out. But let my beloved come into his garden and eat his pleasant fruits. In other words, buddy, you can look. You can smell all the spices you want to, but you can't have it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. You can dance with me at the ball, but you're not taking me back to your chambers afterwards.
Right, or you're not taking me, to the private chambers anyway.
That's right. And it picks back up right here. He's got this first verse in chapter 5.
Yeah, he's got this verse.
They're like having a conversation.
Yeah,
right
they're
here.
having. It is conversational piece, and I mean, this book actually has a storyline, and it has dialogue between them.
Absolutely.
And he says, "I am come into my garden, my sister, my spouse. I have gathered my myrrh with my spice. I have eaten my honeycomb with my honey. I have drunk my wine with my milk. Eat, O friends, drink ye." Drink abundantly, O beloved. So he's telling her she is going to be his.
Well, not just that, but he's saying, I get what I want.
Yeah.
I get whatever I want,
Yeah.
and you're going to do what I tell you to do. But she's going, yeah, you can do that with your stuff, but not with my stuff.
And it seems like we have a change of scenery right here. And she starts talking about another situation, possibly that's going on. So I'll let you pick up here in verse 2.
Yeah, this is like another.
This is like a little time lapse here.
Yeah, a little bit of a time lapse, and it picks up almost like she's alone by herself at this point.
Right.
I sleep, but my heart waketh. It is the voice of my beloved that knocketh, saying, and right here this is the shepherd talking.
Yeah, he says, "Open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my undefiled." See, undefiled, he acknowledges right here that she's undefiled.
Right.
This is a virgin woman that him and the king are competing over here.
Right.
For my head is filled with dew, and my locks with the drops of the night. I have put off my coat. How shall I put it on? I have washed my feet. How shall I defile them? And then she picks back up here in verse 4.
She picks back up, yeah, right here in verse 4. She says, "My beloved put in his hand by the hole of the door, and my bowels were moved for him." So
she was really longing for him.
Yeah,
And her stomach just churned.
That butterflies in the stomach.
Yeah.
And she was really moved by that. She was
Right.
like, "Oh my goodness, I'm going to lose him if I don't go."
Right, verse 5.
I rose up to open to my bed. I rose up to open to my beloved, and my hands dropped with myrrh, and my fingers with sweet-smelling myrrh upon the handles of the lock. So, in the king's chambers, when you're about to be married, when you're betrothed to the king, you're already living the lifestyles of the rich and famous.
Right.
You are decked out in all the fancy clothes, and
Right.
you're taking 5 baths a day and all the things. So she's all, decorated up, and she's all smelling of perfumes and whatnot. I opened to my beloved, but my beloved had withdrawn himself and was gone. My soul failed when he spake. I sought him, but I could not find him. I called him, but he gave me no answer.
So in other words, she waited too long.
She waited too long. She
hesitated. She was like, she really wanted to go. She had butterflies in her stomach, but she waited. By the time she got herself composed, got to the door, he was gone.
Right.
And now she's looking for the guy. So, okay, verse 7.
Verse 7, she says, "The watchmen that went about the city found me. They smote me, they wounded me. The keepers of the walls took away my veil from me."
This is such an important verse. We have got to talk about this just for a minute. If she was betrothed to the king and looking for another man, this is explainable.
Right.
But if there was no other character involved, if the shepherd and Solomon was the same guy, why in the world would they smite her and wound her and take her veil if she was looking for the man that she's betrothed to.
Supposed to marry.
Right.
If she was looking for the king, they'd say, oh, well, he's down in such and such chamber. Let me escort you, my lady.
Right. So, and another thing to acknowledge here is in the Jewish tradition, when you become betrothed to somebody, you put on a veil, and you are no longer able for anyone to see your face until the day of the wedding.
Right.
Until you are married, the day of your wedding, the veil comes off, and you and your new husband now go through life together as one, and you now no longer have your veil. But once you become engaged to somebody, then you wear this veil until that wedding day, from the day of the engagement.
Right.
So the fact that she still had on a veil that they could take off is confirmation that her and Solomon had not
unwed.
ever been married to this point.
They were
They
unwed.
were still waiting on that marriage date.
Yeah. She says then, I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if ye find my beloved, that ye tell him that I am sick of love. That's
So
that
she's
sick of love again.
lovesick. She's lovesick.
She's lovesick.
Want
She
her
wants him.
beloved, wanting the man that she loves.
She wants him back. And I think she's feeling pretty trapped at this point.
Yeah, well, the daughters of Jerusalem, listen to what they said. What is thy beloved more than another beloved? In other words, why is this one any better than the other one? So there's two people here involved.
Right.
So they are asking her, why is thy beloved more than another beloved? O thou fairest among women. So they acknowledge who she is. What is thy beloved more than another beloved, that thou dost so charge us?
And she responds to him. She says, my beloved is white and ruddy.
Oh, listen, he's white.
He's white.
She's black and he's white.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who'll blow their top over that one.
There's a lot of people that would not like this concept, but that is Bible. That's what it says.
That's biblical.
That's biblical.
That's absolutely biblical. My beloved is white and ruddy, the chiefest among 10,000. So she's saying he's the bestest of the bestest.
He's the best of the best of the best of the best.
That's right. His head is as the most fine gold. His locks are bushy and black as a raven.
So
Have you ever seen a raven up close?
Yeah,
They're black, but they're so
they got a
black
blue
that they're
sheen to
blue.
them.
They're
Yeah.
shiny. Yeah. She's saying he's got the most beautiful black hair you've ever seen in your life. His eyes are as the eyes of doves by the rivers of waters, washed with milk and fitly set. His cheeks are as a bed of spices, as sweet flowers, his lips like lilies, dropping sweet-smelling myrrh. His hands are as gold rings set with the beryl. His belly is as bright ivory overlaid with sapphires.
Ivory. This dude is white.
He's white.
Yeah, he's ivory white.
His legs are as pillars of marble.
Marble is white.
Marble is also white, set upon sockets of fine gold. His countenance is as Lebanon, excellent as the cedars. So as someone who is from Lebanon, she's sitting here going, he's home.
Yeah. Yeah, she's comparing him to the most valuable thing she knows.
The most valuable thing she knows, exactly.
So,
His mouth is most sweet, yea, he is altogether lovely. This is my beloved, and this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem.
now it's very important to make this point, standing right here. She was caught by the watchman looking for this shepherd.
Yeah.
From this point on, we're about to go into chapter 6. There's 6, 7, and 8. 3 more chapters in this book. From this point on, when Solomon addresses this woman, he never again calls her my sister, my spouse.
That's right. He never does.
He addresses her differently after this, and we'll see that here in a minute.
The daughters of Jerusalem ask her again, right here.
Yeah, the daughters of Jerusalem says, whither is thy beloved gone, O thou fairest among women? Whither is thy beloved turned aside, that we may seek him with thee? So she's going to go with them this time.
Yeah.
See that? We may seek them with thee. The first time she didn't go with them to find him.
Right.
But this time she's going with them and they're looking for her beloved.
Right. She said, my beloved is gone down into his garden, to the beds of spices to feed in the gardens, and to gather lilies. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. He feedeth among the lilies.
And I will point out yet, to this date, or to this point in this book, we have yet seen sex.
That's true.
There has not been any sexual innuendo
We're
here.
already in chapter 6 out of 8, and
There is no sexual innuendo.
There's no sexual contact of any sort.
No, none. And she is undefiled.
Right.
This is, okay.
Okay, so this picks up with King Solomon.
Okay, King Solomon has got something to say. He says, Thou art beautiful, O my love, as Tirzah comely as Jerusalem, terrible as an army with banners. Now he's saying, you're terrible. You're beautiful, but you're terrible as an army.
Have you ever seen an angry woman before?
Well, it's not that. It's not angry woman. He's hard. He was a spouse to this woman, and she's gone after another man, and now he knows.
Right.
So he's disappointed.
Not just once, but twice now.
Yeah. And so he's disappointed at this point.
Right.
You know. So he says, Turn away thine eyes from me, for they have overcome me. Thy hair is a flock of goats that appear in Gilead. He said, Turn away thine eyes, for they have overcome me. You have killed me, woman. You know, he's disappointed here.
And he, if you pay attention right here, he's going back over all the things that were so wonderful about her to him.
Right. He said, Thy teeth are as a flock of sheep which go up from the washing, whereof every one beareth twins. Of course, this is a song.
Right.
So you would expect a little bit of a repetition in a song.
Just a little, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know. And there is not one barren among them. As a piece of a pomegranate are thy temples within thy locks. There are 60 queens. So that's 60 queens.
60. Mm-hmm.
And 80 concubines, which is 80 concubines.
Yep.
And virgins without number. So he said there's 60 queens, 80 concubines, and an unlimited amount of virgins in the world. He said, My dove, my undefiled is but one. So he's like, you're a 1 in a million, girl. That's basically what he's saying. She is the only one of her mother. She is the choice one of her that bare her. The daughter saw her and blessed her, yea, the queens and the concubines, and they praised her. So she's a very beautiful woman and recognized as such from everybody. Who is she that looketh forth as the morning, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, and here he goes again, and terrible as an army with banners. So he's really disappointed.
Yeah.
I went down into the garden of nuts to see the fruits of the valley, and to see whether the vine flourisheth, and the pomegranates budded. Wherever I was aware, my soul made me like the chariots of Amminadab. Return, return, O Shulamite. Return, return, that we may look upon thee. What will ye see in the Shulamite, as it were the company of 2 armies?
Is he saying right there that this other man is a Shulamite?
It seems like it.
And
her being, and both of them's hurt him.
Yeah.
So he said, as it were a company of 2 armies.
Yeah.
So he's hurt by both of them, or disappointed by both of them. And this is a very important point that Solomon makes right here that people have looked over. He said, How beautiful are thy feet with shoes, O prince's daughter. She was the daughter of a prince.
Yep.
This was not your, what does it say over here again in this preface? Calls her a simple Jewish maiden. He plainly says, Solomon himself says, Oh, beautiful are thy feet with shoes, O prince's daughter. And it makes sense for a prince's daughter to be betrothed to the king.
Right.
Because that was a political movement.
Right.
That made good ties between those countries and friendships between those countries. So it would make sense for the prince's daughter to be betrothed to the king.
Right.
So this Shulamite woman was the daughter of a prince.
Yes, it's an alliance.
So now we have, it thickens the plot a bit, because now we have a Shulamite woman who is a prince who is in love with a shepherd.
Yeah. So you have royalty in love with someone who should be inaccessible to them as far as marriage goes.
Yeah.
And she's betrothed to a king of another nation, and she's running away from all that so that she can be in love.
All right. And then he says, the joints of thy thighs are like jewels, the work of the hands of a cunning workman. Excuse me. Thy navel is like a round goblet which wanteth not liquor. Thy belly is like a heap of wheat set about with lilies. Again, he says, of course we can expect repetition in a song. He says, thy two breasts are like two young roes that are twins. Okay, no big deal. I mean, he's not, like I said, you have to be really affected by the sexual revolution in this country and use your imagination to really make sex out of that.
Right.
Because that does not even mean that your shirt was off.
Right.
Okay. He said, thy neck is as a tower of ivory, thine eyes like the fish pools of Heshbon, that by the gate of Bath Rabam, thy nose is as the tower of Lebanon, which looketh toward Damascus.
Did he say she's got a big nose?
Or that, or she stuck up.
Maybe.
He may be saying, you stuck your nose up at us.
That may be.
You know. Thy hand upon thee is like caramel, and the hair of thine head like purple. The king is held in the galleries.
I think Carmel right there, because it's capitalized.
For those of
you that can't see, it's Mount Carmel.
Yeah, it's Mount Carmel. And anybody can read along with us. We've just got the Bible out here now. He says, how fair and how pleasant art thou, O love, for delights. This thy stature is like to a palm tree, and thy breast to cluster of grapes. I said, I will go up to the palm tree, I will take hold of the boughs thereof. Now also thy breast shall be as a cluster of the vine, and the smell of thy nose like apples, and the roof of thy mouth like the best wine for my beloved, that goeth down sweetly, causing the lip of those that are asleep to speak.
He really wanted her to love him.
He really did.
He really did.
He really did. Of course, he has, we'll
get into that.
I have went to Walmart before, and I bought, 50 things.
Right.
And had the money to pay for these 50 things, and then turn around and seen something that I could have bought with the money I had, and looked at my 50 things and went, I
really want that.
I could have had the BB gun, and I bought dinosaurs.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, this is kind of where he's at. He's like,
And she comes back to that. She
actually says something here in verse 10.
She says something here that's really important, and this is, I think, the sentiment of every young woman who is about to marry somebody that she truly loves. I am my beloved's, and his desire is toward me.
She's telling the king that she belongs to this shepherd.
She belongs to the shepherd. Come, my beloved, let us go forth into the field. Let us lodge in the villages. Let us get up early to the vineyards. Let us see if the vine flourisheth, whether the tender grape appear, and the pomegranates bud forth. There will I give thee my loves.
So now she's actually talking to both of them here, if you notice.
In a way,
she tells the king that she belongs to the shepherd, and then she tells the shepherd, let's go.
Yeah.
And we'll live happily ever after kind of thing.
Yeah. She says, the mandrakes give a smell, and at our gate are all manner of pleasant fruits, new and old, which I have laid up for thee, O my beloved.
So she's talking to the beloved right here.
Yeah.
Now, it's important to point out, too, that mandrakes have always been used in herbal remedies and herbal medicine for women issues and things and fertility
Yeah,
issues
for
and stuff.
for
So
regulatory issues.
she's saying poetically here that she wants to have his kids.
Yeah.
And live happily ever after with the man she loves.
Right.
Is what she's saying.
Right here, chapter 8 picks back up and says, "Oh, that thou wert as my brother, that sucked the breast of my mother. When I should find thee without, I would kiss thee. Yea, I should not be despised." So I think what she's saying there is that right now, people are going to give them a hard time.
I think so. I think she's acknowledging that people despise her because she's not bowing to the king and going through with that espousal.
And she's not following the status quo. You got to remember, she is the
is
daughter of a
royalty.
prince.
Yeah.
She's royalty. And she's about to marry a shepherd instead of a king.
Or about to run off with
Or about
him
to run
get
off with him to
married.
get married, yeah. So she's not doing what anybody wants her to do except her and her love.
Yeah. Continue on. Verse 2.
"I would lead thee and bring thee into my mother's house, who would instruct me. I would cause thee to drink of spiced wine, of the juice of my pomegranate. His left hand should be under my head, and his right hand should embrace me. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, that ye stir not up, nor awake my love, until he please." So that's again that repeating
That repeating
phrase. "Who is this that cometh up from the wilderness, leaning upon her beloved? I raised thee up under the apple tree. There thy mother brought thee forth. There she brought thee forth that bare thee." So like 3 generations right there.
Yeah.
"Set me as a seal upon thy heart, as a seal upon thine arm, for love is strong as death. Jealousy is cruel as the grave. The coals thereof are the coals of fire, which hath a most vehement flame. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can the floods drown it. If a man would give all the substance of his house for love, it would utterly be contemned." So she's saying her love is undying.
Right.
Completely and totally undying, and that it's not something that's going to die until she does.
Right.
Right here it picks up with something that's a little different. She says, "We have a little sister, and she hath no breasts." So she's still young. She's a child. She hasn't hit puberty yet. "What shall we do for our sister in the day when she shall be spoken for?"
Okay, when she's grown, what shall we do?
Yeah, because she's going to end up in the same situation.
Right.
She's, again, the daughter of the prince, so
Right.
she's going to end up in the same situation. She's probably going to be spoken for by some royal somewhere.
Yeah.
"If she be a wall, we will build upon her a palace of silver, and if she be a door, we will enclose her with boards of cedar."
Yeah, in other words, if she builds a wall, like a wall between her and other people, stays pure,
Right,
and stays strong,
right.
then they will build upon her a palace of silver. She'll
She'll make a firm foundation for a family.
She'll build a firm foundation for herself. But if she's like what a lot of people refer to as a revolving door, if she becomes a harlot,
Right.
know,
Then they'll lock her back behind other closed doors that won't open.
Enclose her with boards of cedar.
Right.
We'll put her. We will build the wall for her, so to speak.
Right. And then she says, "I am a wall, and my breasts like towers. Then was I in his eyes as one that found favor." So because she built this wall and kept herself as a pure maiden, she was desirable to not only the shepherd, but to Solomon and probably to many others.
Right.
Everyone addressed her as the fairest among
But
women,
she
including the
kept
daughters
her
of Jerusalem.
Self undefiled.
Right.
She kept her innocence intact.
Right.
She's
By
saying,
building
I
herself
am a
up
wall.
as this wall. Yeah.
She has been very intelligent and smart with herself.
And this is her comment on Solomon.
Yeah.
She says, "Solomon had a vineyard at Belhaman. He let out the vineyard unto the keepers. Every one for the fruit thereof was to bring 1,000 pieces of silver. My vineyard, so herself, which is mine, is before me. Thou, O Solomon, must have 1,000, and those that keep the fruit thereof 200. Thou that dwellest in the gardens, the companions hearken to thy voice, cause me to hear it.
She's saying right here, she's basically telling the king, you've got 700 wives and 300 concubines. We know that's right.
Yeah.
You have 1,000 women.
Right, which is one of the reasons why I say that Solomon was not young at this point. This was
right. This was not when Solomon was not influenced, as this thing says. But this actually happened when she's telling Solomon, you've got 1,000 and I have one.
I have but my own.
My vineyard, which is mine, is before me. She points at this shepherd and said, my vineyard that is mine is right here.
Yeah.
This is all I've got. You've got 1,000.
Right.
And this is kind of important point to make too, because it was not at all unheard of or taboo for a man to have multiple wives.
Right.
I mean, here it is. Solomon has got 700 wives and 300 concubines.
Right.
That was not unheard of for that time. But for a woman to have multiple husbands, she was a harlot, she was a whore, she was defiled.
Right.
She was to be stoned and killed. So she's sitting here saying, this is all I'm going to have. I'm going to give my love to who I want to give my love to.
Right. And it can't be bought.
And, she's basically telling Solomon, if I marry you, I will never have an opportunity to marry him again.
Yeah.
She give her love to the one. And this is so important because in verse 14, the last verse of the Bible, she says, make haste, my love, and be thou like a roe, or to a young hart upon the mountains of spices. This is so important of a book and a illustration, the story behind it, because the shepherd is her first love.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And it starts out with them and their declarations of love to each other.
Right.
Solomon was not her first love, and in the book of Revelation, when Christ is speaking to one of the churches, he said, thou hast left thy first love. I believe that is a direct reference to the Song of Solomon.
And there's a lot of analogies that you could draw there. I mean, Solomon has 1,000 loves and the shepherd has but one. Right.
And Solomon's heart was, you remember when the shepherd stood at the door and knocked.
Yeah.
How many times did Jesus say, lo, I stand at the door and knock?
Yeah. And Christ is the shepherd.
And if you tarry, if you wait long, if you sit and you hesitate, you might go to that door and the shepherd gone. And then you're going to be running,
trying to
catch up with him. Don't hesitate for Christ. If he's at the door knocking, open that door.
There's a reason he's knocking.
Christ was our first love from Eden.
Right.
He was our first love. But now, because of the fall of man and the deception, we're married to sin, or betrothed to sin. We're betrothed to Satan. We are espoused, so to say, to sin in this world. But there is the good shepherd. There is a shepherd that stands at the door knocking.
And you don't have to marry sin. You don't have to stay in that relationship. Yes, it's the relationship that you're already in, but you do not have to stay there.
And you notice another thing that I really want to point out. When Satan tempted Christ in the wilderness, mm-hmm. He took him to the top of a mountain and showed him all the cities and the empires of the earth. And he said, all of this I will give to you if you just worship me.
He did do that. Absolutely.
Solomon had showed her all that she could have. to marry him.
Right. In a way, it was a pretty strong temptation. You notice she hesitated at one point.
Yeah, I don't see that she had any animosity toward the king.
Right.
I don't believe that she hated Solomon. She was not in love with Solomon. He was not her first love.
And I think
and she stayed committed.
I think that even as much as Solomon was wounded by this, that he still loved her, and not just that, but recognized her love for the shepherd, or this book wouldn't be in our Bible necessarily.
I think this is an actual account to something.
I do too.
That Solomon went through at one point, and I think it had such a profound effect on him that he recorded, and that the God used it to inspire this book that we have now in the Scripture of the Holy Writ.
I do too.
I believe it was God inspired. I believe the whole situation was a God inspired situation for the sake of us having this as an example today.
As we've seen in other Scripture over the years that we've studied together, you will find that God can take everyday situations and turn them into a testimony of His power. And God will take things that hurt you and make them something that you can learn from.
Right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, one more time. I'm fixing to read this preface in this Bible.
The same one that we already read.
On the book that we have spent the last hour and 15 minutes or so involved in and in discussion in. And you tell me if this preface hits anywhere close to the book we just read, all right? Saturated with stories of sexual escapades, secret rendezvous, and extramarital affairs, today's media teach that immorality means freedom, perversion is natural, and commitment is old-fashioned. Sex created by God and pronounced good in Eden has been twisted, exploited, and turned into an urgent, illicit, casual, and self-gratifying activity. Love has turned into lust, giving into getting, and lasting commitment into no strings attached. I agree with that 100%. That's what the media has taught today's. That is the sexual revolution in the United States.
Absolutely. And we've been living with it for years.
In reality, sexual intercourse, the physical and emotional union of male and female, should be a holy means of celebrating love, producing children, and experiencing pleasure protected by the commitment of marriage. God thinks sex is important, and Scripture contains numerous guidelines for which its use and warnings about its misuse. Let me read that again. God thinks sex is important, and Scripture contains numerous guidelines for its use and warnings about its misuse. And sex is always mentioned in the context of a loving relationship within. And sex is always mentioned. And sex is always mentioned in the text of a loving relationship between husband and wife. Perhaps the highlight of this is the Song of Solomon, the intimate story of a man and a woman, their love, courtship, and marriage.
Sounds like somebody missed something.
Their love and courtship and marriage. Solomon probably wrote this song in his youth before being overtaken by his own obsession with women, sex, and pleasure. A moving story, drama, and poem, the Song of Solomon features the love dialogue between a simple Jewish maiden, the Shulamite woman, and her lover, Solomon the king. They describe in intimate detail their feelings for each other and their belongings. They describe in intimate detail their feelings for each other and their longings to be together. Throughout the dialogue, sex and marriage are put in their proper God-given perspective. Much debate has raged over the meaning of this song. Some say it is an allegory of God's love for Israel or for the church. Others say it is a literal story about married love. In reality, it is both. A historical story with two layers of meaning. On one level, we learn about love, marriage, and sex, and on the other level, we see God's overwhelming love for His people. As you read the Song of Solomon, remember that you are loved by God and commit yourself to seeing life, sex, and marriage from His point of view.
Like I said, like you said earlier, I do believe it's well written, but I don't think it's accurate.
I don't think it's well researched.
I don't think it's well researched.
It's not scripturally sound.
No, it's not.
And even if the intent was good, it's still wrong, and wrong is wrong.
Well, a miss is as good as a mile.
A miss is good as a mile. Everybody, I'm Ricky.
And I'm Sydney.
This is your peanut butter for today. Put it on your bread
and spread the word.